So it's very important for a parent to leave the ego at the door, talking it over, processing it, and be very cool-headed.
And not freak out and unload everything all at once.
The first few times I came home stoned, my mom would bring me out on the porch and just ream me out and try and make me feel bad about coming home stoned and blah, 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 blah.
But seldom do confrontation and guilt work to build anything other than a wall. And once that wall goes up, guess what? Peers are there to comfort that child.
High school. High school is the whole reason why I became the way I am today. But don't get me wrong, I do not regret anything that I did or did not do because it shows me who I am today and what I've learned from my past. But it's pretty much the group that I hung out with. I hung out with the smokers, I hung out with the tokers, the people that popped weed, that dropped acid. I hung out with all those people. And I got influenced and I got caught up in the moment. Oh, they're doing this. Why can't I do this?
It's usually those peers who are feeding the kid the idea of using a substance to have fun. So if we put up that wall, it's very important to realize that the consequences that there's going to be a surrogate peer family that has a pro-using attitude to welcome that child.
As difficult as it is when your young person has a friend that you don't approve of, sometimes welcoming that friend into your home becomes more important than welcoming the friends that you love. At least when they're in their home, when they're in your home, you can see them together, you can see the dynamics of the relationship, you have a bit more of a measure of control on what's happening with that relationship. It's hard sometimes because at the end of the day we're tired, we've worked, we've had all these demands on us from all these different places, but sometimes if we become the place that young people are comfortable and we welcome them into our homes, we know where they're at. We know way better what they're doing. And if young people have that freedom where their home is a safe place to bring their friends, I think there's safety in that.
Especially the marijuana is widely accepted in a lot of places, down in the city and stuff like that. And, it shouldn't be. It really shouldn't. They say it's harmless. It's not harmless. It's far from it.
As a society, what we have done, and when I say we, I'm including law enforcement, including politicians, parents, we really undermine the harms of drug use. And as a result of that, there's an attitude that goes along with that drugs are harmless, that you can use a certain drug and not be affected by it. It's taken us years and years to convince some people about the harms of tobacco. It's taken us many years to convince people to wear seatbelts. It's taken us many years to get people to think about drinking and driving. So when it comes to the drug situation, this will not happen overnight. It's going to be a process. It's going to take a long process. And we do that through education. We do that through empowering parents to become part of their child's lives and raise children, raise kids, and get them to understand the role about being healthy, that a healthy lifestyle is so important for a person.
Well, see, the most successful way of getting away from drugs is engaging in a total lifestyle change. On top of that, then you need to engage in those lifestyle changes, like changing your friends, like re-engaging with old friends or family, or creating new support systems. Get involved in recreation programs where they become a part of a group and they can feel like they're connected with people. A lot of kids get isolated, and I think that's sometimes where they'll get involved in some more drug use, is that when you're isolated and alone and you've got nobody to share that stuff with, then it becomes really overwhelming. And the reaction is to try and deal with that overwhelmingness.
There has been a lot of research done on individuals who've come from very abusive families, have lived in homes where alcoholism was very high rate of alcoholism, drug use was high, and kids grew up in those families and never used drugs. So being knowledgeable is really important to understand. And when you're being knowledgeable, and I know it's a cliche, knowledge is power, it is so true. Understanding that there's consequences. And if you live in a family where your parents perhaps drink too much or are alcoholics, they've made that choice. You don't have to make the same choice. And so that's so important. Obviously knowledge, and then obviously from there, that can give you the strength to not have to get involved.
Years we taught quote-unquote drug prevention in school systems, which consisted of telling everybody what the drugs were and how they affected you. And we didn't talk about coping. And so what happened was basically, when they took a look years later, did some research into it, we weren't helping anybody. You reduced their use of drugs. Not, in matter of fact, we were kind of titillating them.
But if research teaches us that knowledge alone is helpless without coping mechanisms, what tools can parents use? The decision-making model is a process we engage in to make the best choice out of any given situation. It is important that youth have the skills to identify the problem and then move on to the next step in the model, which is to list the alternative solutions. Once we identify the problem, we need to review our situation and find which solutions are available to us. Our ability to understand which solutions are available and which solutions are appropriate allows us to move on to the next step, weighing the alternatives and predicting the outcomes. Once we have weighed the alternatives and predicted the possible outcomes, we can then move on to the next step, in which we choose and use the best alternative. Not until we have progressed through these steps can we then move on to the final step in the model, where we evaluate our choice. In this way, we can review and improve our choices the next time we are faced with difficult situations.
When kids stay at home or being constantly bailed out by their parents while addicted to a drug and actively using the drug, that spiraling to rock bottom is just slower. But they do get there. As opposed to the parent who sets the limits and boundaries and says, hey, enough is enough, here's the rules, you got to follow them or, we can't help you. That person will hit a rock bottom a lot faster. But there's less what I call emotional drama that occurs when the parents kind of set definite limits and boundaries and expectations for their kids' substance use behavior and what's acceptable and what's not. And in ways it helps the parents keep a clear head and to deal with the issues that they have to and to maintain their own sanctity as a person as well. So that's a key point that I think is important for parents to realize, that sometimes when they think they're helping, they're just, in essence, extending the emotional drama that they're going to experience with their child.
You've got to learn to set boundaries, and I've had a really hard time with that due to lack of energy, due to being exhausted, just absolutely being at the end of my rope. It's been really hard to have the energy to even set the boundaries due to I don't like confrontation, I don't like having to deal with his outbursts, but that it's been good, and to know that even setting the boundaries of that you're not going to deal with his outbursts, you're not going to deal with it, that's even a boundary, that you're allowing yourself not to have that confrontation. You're not allowing yourself to be drawn into that confrontation.
But the most vital piece in a child's prevention has to occur during the child development period in elementary school, long before they reach adolescence. The difficulty is that in elementary school, the problems are usually manageable. If little Billy's acting out, he's manageable. As soon as Billy hits high school, now the problem is unmanageable in the classroom. The child becomes prone to high-risk behavior. However, if we had taken proactive steps addressing the issues early on during that early childhood period, we would have had more success in the long term. Yet many of our approaches are what we call Band-Aid solutions. We react after the fact. Real prevention, however, involves addressing the core issues that make youth vulnerable to peer pressure, vulnerable to being impressionable to the media, and vulnerable to at-risk behavior. It is these core issues that need to be addressed. Intermediate intervention prior to experimentation must take place